My outfit is phenomenal, and shots are already fired. But that's okay. At least I'm in the right season. Christopher Mad Dog Russo digs already on a Wednesday.
Good morning.
It's that kind of day?
It's that kind of. Hello, Monica. How are you?
Good morning.
Did you guys see Brian Windhorst on television yesterday?
I did not. I missed it.
Oh, you missed Windy? Just Google that, okay? Just Google Windy, air quotes, Perk, Jason Tatum, and you won't be mad. All right, guys, we got a lot to get into, and we're starting in the NBA. Going to be a fun show here today. The Nuggets fired head coach Michael Malone and general manager Calvin Booth just days before the end of the regular season. The decision to fire the coach and eventually part ways with the GM, who won a championship in 2023, comes at a time when the Nuggets have lost 4 straight games and are in danger of falling into the play-in. We definitely did not predict that in the offseason. Windy, please tell me, why did Denver make this decision and right now?
I don't have a good explanation. I will try my best to explain what I think they were thinking. Not that I'm endorsing it, to be clear. What Josh Kroenke, the governor of the Denver Nuggets, expressed in his comments to the team media, he did not take questions, at least not yet, from the overall media, was that he felt that there needed to be a change, and he had already decided to fire Michael Malone and Calvin Booth at the end of the season, and he thought he should do it now. And he's also said something I think is very important, which is that he said sometimes wins can mask issues. And so my interpretation of that is that he had decided he was going to fire Michael Malone, and if he had left him in the job and they had had some sort of playoff run, that maybe he couldn't have fired him. And I think it's important to point out the history of the Kroenke family. Stan Kroenke is the owner, and Josh Kroenke is the governor. This is a group that owns a number of humongous sports clubs across the world. The Los Angeles Rams, the Colorado Avalanche, the Nuggets, the Arsenal, the soccer club in England. All of those teams, the Kroenkes have shown very little interest in changing the head coaches. I think since he bought the Rams in 2010, I think he's fired the coach once, maybe twice. I think that he's changed coaches twice. With the Arsenal, he's only fired one coach since he bought the team in 2007. I don't think he's changed coaches with the Avalanche in a decade. Michael Malone was the 4th longest tenured head coach. This is not an ownership that fires coaches. That's not what they do. They show extraordinary patience with coaches. So for them to do and actually make a coaching change at one of their prime properties, and I also want to point out, they've won championships with all 4 of those teams in the last decade. This is a stewardship that values coaching and values stability. And to still do that with 3 games left in the season is very unusual, and you could argue downright disrespectful to the winningest coach in franchise history who led you to a championship. They are certainly aware of that, and yet they still did it. So, while I cannot predict the future and I would not try, the fact that I know their history and I listen to what he said makes me believe that they were so confident in firing him that they went against the way that they always operate with the coaches, and that they didn't want him to get some sort of playoff run that would have made it harder to do.
Yeah, this one smells to me. It's very curious. Mad Dog, do you think Denver made a massive mistake in doing this?
I wouldn't have done it. Malone, obviously, 2 years ago won a championship. I think it's about dysfunction. I think Booth and we all know they didn't like each other anyway, so I think he didn't want to sit there and split the baby in half, because both are made contributions to the championship team there a couple of years ago. But to fire a guy with 3 games to go in a year, and he's been there for 10 years, and he won a title 2 years ago, that's a little rough. I mean, I understand they had a 4-game losing streak, but, they didn't play 5 of their starters in one of the games against San Antonio. Murray's been out. I mean, there are some explanations there. Kroenke is not a sports guy. His father owns everything. He's not a sports guy. Good point by Windy. As far as the other franchises they own, they have been very stable, and they've won. The Rams won at Super Bowl. The Nuggets have won. The Avalanche have won. So from that standpoint, they have been good stewards of the teams that they own. But you can't tell me that firing, and forget the GM. You can't tell me, because right now it's about the coach. You can't tell me that firing a coach with 3 games to go in a regular season, when they won a title 2 years ago, they are in the playoffs. It's not like they're not they're in the play-in. They're in the playoffs, we think. That you can't tell me that's a solid move. And I'll say one other thing. If anybody thinks, and I'm not putting any blame on them, but if anybody thinks that they didn't go to Joker, just like the Grizzlies with Morant, they I'm not saying that
he co-signed on it.
Well, he didn't fight to keep Malone because you can't pay a guy the money that they're paying Joe and not at least tell the player, by the way, we're going to fire Malone. You okay with that? And if Joker wasn't okay with that, if he wanted to, he says, what are you, crazy? We can't fire him. I love the guy.
Yeah.
So that from that standpoint, I'm not saying he had anything to do with it, but he didn't go out there and save Malone either from that standpoint.
You think it's a mistake, Monica?
I'm not gonna lie, the news comes down yesterday. We're taping 7 p.m. in Brooklyn with Carmelo Anthony, and literally my jaw drops because it is unusual for sure. But then we started discussing it, you get still, you give yourself a minute. I have been a part of at least 2 press conferences this season, and I've heard it more than once, not in press conferences that I haven't been present in. It almost became thematic this year when the Nuggets had these head-scratching sort of losses. You would hear Michael Malone say, we've got to raise our compete level. He's made comments about this team's effort. Now, granted, I'm not saying teams don't have off nights, but I think that has reared its head enough this season for a team that has an MVP caliber centerpiece and still has its championship core that, to me, as I sat and thought, I'm like, maybe his voice is no longer resonating in this locker room. Because we all acknowledge this is odd timing. And so if Kroenke, who has a history of allowing his coaches to play it out, thinks that it's this urgent to make this change now, you're basically saying, the quiet part is saying that you may think you have a better chance without him, even though, as Wendy laid out, he didn't want winning to mask a real issue. So to me, this is far more about the future of the organization. Nikola Jokic is a fresh 30 and still has a ton of runway in terms of being one of the most dominant players in the league. And so this is the ownership group, in my mind, letting the players know we have your back. Now, I can't say who did or didn't ask for this to happen, but I agree with you because I think if kicking and screaming Nikola Jokic, who we usually see as pretty even-keeled, said he did not want this to happen, then maybe something goes down differently. But I am not okay calling it a mistake because I think this organization has earned enough of our respect. I do think that if you are the coach that takes a team to the championship, you've squeezed everything out of this group. You're still dealing with millionaires. You're still dealing with the human element. We always hear teams across leagues talk about how difficult it is to repeat. So that voice, possibly going stale, I just think that's part of the human experience.
It just feels like it has to be more than performance-based, unless they're just trying to resurrect the season that could end up in the play-in tournament. Wendy, I'll give you the final word, and then we'll keep it rolling.
I do agree with Mad Dog that there's a nuance that there's a difference between a player asking for a coach to be fired and a star player with influence not stopping it. I think it was the latter. I think Mad Dog is right here. That's my belief. The other thing I will say is the Kroenkes do have a history of moving on from successful executives. They have let big-time star executives from Tim Conley to Masai Ujiri, even back before Kiki Vandeweghe, Mark Workentine, they've routinely let executives leave. That's a different factor. And yes, Calvin Booth and Michael Malone quarreled about who should play, young players versus old players. Michael Malone has quarreled with his executives for a decade.